Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you've joined us for this presentation about sugar and food addiction. We want you to know that food and sugar cravings are natural and not your fault. You are not alone, and that there are some steps you can take to feel more in control. This is an honest discussion among 3 Ideal Protein clinic owners in the Pacific Northwest. My name is Heather Catherall. I'm the owner of Eastside Weight and Wellness. My business partner, Debbie Braidaway, and I own 5 Ideal Protein clinics in Redmond, Washington, Duval, Overlake near Microsoft, Mercer Island, and West Seattle. We've been clinic owners for about 6 years now and love what we do. We are so happy with the outcomes people get following the Ideal Protein protocol. It's super exciting and super fun seeing people on their journeys. I'm joined by Pauline.
Thanks, Heather. Yes, my name is Pauline Johnson. I'm the owner of Aspire Wellness. We have offices in Burlington and Linden, Washington, and serve Skagit Island and Whatcom counties. We've been in business since my brother started our office in 2009, and we've helped almost 1,000 clients to date with an average weight loss of 57 pounds. In our communities, we've lost 54,000 pounds and counting. It is such an awesome privilege to see and encourage our clients to pursue their best health. And Tammy.
Hi, my name is Tammy Benner. I own Ideal Weight Loss Clinic here in Snohomish County. We have 2 locations, one in Everett and one in Marysville. We have been in business for 10 years now, and we love what we do. I tell all my friends that I get to help save lives without going to medical school. How cool is that? So to start us off today, we're going to talk about food addiction and what it is. We're going to dig into the anthropology of food addiction, behaviors, consequences, outcomes, and then steps to overcome these cravings and addiction. So Pauline, can you tell us what food addiction is?
Absolutely. So what is food addiction? Addiction is when we put a need for a substance before other priorities, with consequences that negatively impact other parts of our lives. This can be true of drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex, and food. Addiction takes over our thoughts and occupies our minds so that we are constantly looking for that next supply. So that's the definition, and we hope to address that well in this class, but we also will discuss the many aspects of life and behaviors that lead us to food addiction. If you've ever felt like you can eat and never feel full, or you feel guilty after managing a long day, or stress with food, or just plain wish you could do better eating and keep finding yourself fighting the same battles, this class is for you. We hope that you find that you're not alone and that there is hope and tools and ideas to help you with your own personal situations. Tammy, will you talk to us about the history of food?
Absolutely. So in our past, we were hunter-gatherers and we had inconsistent food supply. And so what happened was our hormones developed during this pattern of having food and not having food. And so literally our stomach or our gut would tell our brain to hunt for food. And so interestingly, we say, follow your gut, and so that idea of gut instinct actually comes from this anthropological evolution. So basically, we're hardwired to search for and consume more food than we need because we are used to that feast and famine nature of our existence. But we don't have that anymore with our food. So the first thing that I want to explain is biologically how this feast and famine situation works in our bodies. So what we want is we want to be in what we call homeostasis, which is a stable equilibrium between interdependent elements. So in this case, we want our blood sugar to be level. And so you can see that here in this bar. When our blood sugar is out of balance and we have too much sugar, our insulin hormone kicks in, we store fat, and that is what we call our feast mode. And the opposite effect is if we don't have glucose, then our body produces a hormone called glucagon, and glucagon causes us to burn fat for energy. And so again, top half is feast, bottom half is famine. Okay. So now that you understand fat storage and fat burning, inside of our gut, there is a gene called prepograelin, and it actually produces hormones called ghrelin and obistatin, which actually send signals to the brain. So you can see here, there's a nerve that connects your brain to your gut. And so when we're hungry or we've overeaten, there are signals that go to our brain. Ghrelin is the hunger hormone. We call that the devil, and obistatin is a satisfaction hormone. And once these signals are sent to the brain, then the brain takes over and there's some chemical responses there. So Pauline, can you tell us a little bit about that brain chemistry?
Absolutely. I love hearing you talk about all that science. So as the slide states, in the past 10 years, we've been able to study the brain more than ever before. And studies have shown that for some people, the same reward and pleasure centers of the brain that are triggered by addictive drugs, such as cocaine or heroin, are also activated by food, especially highly palatable foods. These foods tend to be high in sugar, salt, and fat, and most often are processed. Like addictive drugs, these foods trigger those feel-good brain chemicals in our brain, such as dopamine. Dopamine is the hormone triggered by the reward system part of the brain. It drives motivation, desires, cravings, and satisfaction, and it lies at the heart of addiction to all things, food included. Once we experience this pleasure associated with increased dopamine transmission in our brain's reward pathway from eating certain foods, we quickly feel that need to feel that way again. What else can happen when we're using food as a reward or continuing to over-trigger this dopamine response? Well, we can end up eating and eating for reasons other than hunger and sometimes never feel full. Not understanding this chemical response, or more importantly, when we abuse it, it can cause us to lose control over our eating behavior, and we can find ourselves spending excessive amounts of time involved with food and overeating, or anticipating the emotional effects of compulsive overeating. This can also create almost a tolerance to food, and the more and more we eat, the less and less it satisfies us. Have you ever experienced this? I know I have. This can become a constant cycle of need and reward, especially if we're not aware of it, not intentional, and continuing to eat the foods that create this response in our bodies. Many of our clients have come into our office and started and said they simply feel out of control with their food, their choices, their portion sizes. It's amazing to see the body respond differently when we learn to do things differently. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. Now that we know about hunter-gatherers, food hormones, and some simple brain chemistry, Heather, how is modern life affecting food addiction?
Well, that is exactly the problem. We were hunter-gatherers and we still have hunter-gatherer bodies, but now we're plunked down in a modern world where we don't really have food scarcity anymore. Food is everywhere. And when we see or smell food, it triggers those sensory responses. The brain lights up and then we have a craving response. We start salivating, our stomach starts to growl, and we want to eat that food. It triggers a craving, and we see and smell food everywhere. We no longer have food scarcity. We're surrounded by it. Think about just how many fast food restaurants, mini marts, grocery stores, and places that you pass throughout your day. The other problem is that much of the food we see is processed, packaged, or fast food, and it's packaged well, it's placed well, and it's advertised by experts so that the images are tantalizing, tempting, and mouthwatering. Add to that the affordability of processed foods, dollar menus, ready-to-eat foods, and many people choose the convenience over shopping for meat, produce, whole grains, beans, and dairy, which need to be taken home and prepared, and they can also cost more than a value meal or bag of chips. And let's face it, most people have cravings for sweet, salty, crunchy, fried food over healthy food, and they're easy to get right through your car window. Tammy, is the food industry keeping us addicted on purpose?
Well, what would you think if someone told you that the food industry was fighting for a share of your stomach?
I'd be afraid for my stomach.
Yeah.
My stomach.
Yes. So rather than merely competing with another brand in the food marketplace, the stomach share metaphor takes this battle to the consumer's body. So food companies exploit the dopamine responses in the brain by carefully engineering combinations of sugar, fat, and salt. The perfect combination of this trinity is known in the food industry as the bliss point. So I can go on and on about this, but most of our processed foods are produced in a lab, and food companies these are multi-billion-dollar companies. They are very, very smart. So when I tell you that they know the taste centers on your tongue, and they can create a food that explodes with flavor in the beginning of your mouth and have that flavor palette drop down as it passes to the back of your mouth, so you're instantly wanting more. This is how technical this skill is. And the food industry wants to take advantage of this craving and addiction to sell more product and get you to eat more. And I'm sure all of you have experienced a food where you just feel like there's never enough. I have predicted many times now that they will bring the food industry in front of Congress, just like they did the tobacco industry. And what you're going to hear them say is, we told you you can't just eat one. So Lay's is going to do that. Skinny Pop's going to say it's a whole bag kind of night. And this is sort of what we're dealing with, is this engineering of food to get you to want to eat more and more and more. So Heather, when did gluttony become cool?
Well, everybody is competing for attention. Restaurants, magazines, food channels, food shows, cooking lessons, everybody wants to be noticed. So they make everything extreme. Food has always been a way that people come together. We've always shared meals, we've always socialized with food, but now we have opportunities for more extreme eating. There's a restaurant in my neighborhood that has a special food challenge. It's 4 burgers stacked together, plus a side of fries, with a Bloody Mary, with a garnish that itself just alone could be a whole meal. And if you can eat all of this food within an hour, you get the meal for free, you get your name on the wall. And if you do it in under 30 minutes, there's extra prizes you can have. There's a restaurant in Las Vegas called the Heart Attack Grill that kind of plays on how dangerous it is to eat their food, but not sarcastically. There's a meal that's 13,000 calories on their menu, and their wait staff is dressed in hospital uniforms, just waiting for that person to have a heart attack. So many examples, food challenges all around you. And then TV shows like Epic Meals with very extreme meals. We're encouraged to overeat. We're encouraged to eat outlandish, outrageous food portions. We even saw a little bit of this in the pandemic when people were trying to come together and create community. There was sourdough bread baking, a lot of charcuterie board classes, opportunities to connect through food. And they were a little bit extreme. With everything we do being enhanced and shared on social media, the competition to stand out means we don't practice moderation anymore.
Heather, how has our current culture changed our daily behaviors around food?
Well, for most of our clients, the focus of our coaching is on the behaviors surrounding eating. Ideal Protein Phase 1 is a pretty simplified protocol to follow, but it's the everyday challenges that people are facing. When people first change their eating habits, they become super aware of how much of our socializing and entertainment activities are food focused. They kind of feel like outliers. They often hide their new way of eating to avoid ridicule or sabotage. And they feel like everyone around them is eating whatever they want, whenever they want. They feel surrounded by food because they are. Our culture has made overeating and eating sweet or processed foods so normal that they feel singled out and deprived. Our normalizing overeating has created common food behaviors like eating in our cars, eating more than we need, eating foods that give us a quick hit of sugar, eating for comfort, stress reduction, entertainment, even to give us a work break. We'll get up and walk into the kitchen to get something to eat. Pauline, what are the health consequences from our current food culture?
Yes, well, let's start with some statistics. As you hear this information, just remember, whether you're familiar with it or not, please remember we get to do something about it. So some statistics. A 2020 Harvard statistic shows that 36.2% of Americans 20 years and older are obese. This is down from 41.6 in 2017. That said, severe obesity is up from 4.7% to 9.2% in the past 2 years, and another 32.5% of us are considered overweight. That is a staggering total of 68.7% who are living with the potential consequences that we're discussing today. So obesity is serious because it's associated with poor mental health outcomes and reduced quality of life. Obesity is also associated with the leading causes of death in the United States and worldwide. Obesity-related medical costs in the United States ranges from $147 to nearly $210 billion. Wow, that's coming from a Stop Obesity Alliance group. Annual individual costs of being obese are approximately $4,879 for an obese woman and $2,646 for an obese man. These costs are 15 times higher than total costs of individuals, same gender and employment status, not with obesity. People who have obesity compared to those with a healthy weight are at an increased risk for many diseases and health outcomes, such as heart disease, high blood pressure, unhealthy cholesterol, type 2 diabetes, coronary heart disease, stroke, asthma, gallstones, kidney stones, gallbladder disease, osteoarthritis, sleep apnea and breathing problems, many types of cancers, infertility, mental illness such as clinical depression, anxiety, and other mental disorders, overall pain, and inflammation. So let's touch real quick on how it affects our joints. You may have heard that for every 10 pounds of extra body weight, there is an added 50 pounds of pressure to your hips and knees. Studies have shown that losing just a pound can remove about 6 pounds of pressure off your hips. This added pressure and stress on the joints, hips, and knees can contribute to soft tissue damage and osteoarthritis. As we know also, increased weight causes increased inflammation in the body, which shows up best as increased pain. This is an area we see drastically change quickly on our protocol. Lastly, let's briefly discuss sleep apnea, a well-known side effect to obesity. Although anyone can get sleep apnea, your risk for it doubles when you are carrying excess weight. The more weight we carry, the more narrow our airways become. This disease can be treated by using a CPAP therapy, but the best way to reduce risk or prevent it is through lifestyle modifications, eating behaviors, exercise, eliminating smoking and drinking alcohol are of most concern. Obesity also contributes to insomnia, trouble sleeping, fatigue throughout the day, and snoring. We often hear of these in our offices too, and see dramatic improvements in changes of diet. Tammy, can you talk to us about different eating behaviors or styles of eating?
Yes, I love this part of the presentation. So,
Me too.
yeah, there are 4 ways we eat, okay? Fuel eating is when you're eating foods that support your body and its needs. This is clean eating, real, whole, natural, minimally processed foods that provide you with energy and nourishment and feel good in your body. Fuel eating is the focus of Ideal Protein Phase 1. Fun eating is eating any foods that you love to eat that don't necessarily give you anything back. In other words, it's foods that really taste great and you enjoy, but they may not have really great nutritional value. So think cake, wine, potato chips, candy, things like that. Fog eating is anytime you eat without awareness. You're munching on chips without even tasting them. Maybe you're snacking on your kids' peanut butter and jelly crusts while you're making lunch or cleaning up lunch. You finish off a bag of candy before you realize how much you ate. You come home from work and you're doing some things in the fridge because you're just stressed out from work. So fog eating is really not enjoyable or purposeful. It's an unconscious munch and we're not even aware we're doing it. Storm eating, this is the big one. This is that crave eating, that binge eating, out of control, feeling like you can't just have one, you have to have more and more and more. It's anytime you can't stop yourself. You're aware that you're eating and you want to stop, but you feel like you can't stop. And it's almost like you're watching another person inside of your own body. And this is the eating situation that the food industry loves to capitalize on.
Tammy, that's such great information. Understanding these eating patterns, how can we specifically address them?
Yes. So obviously we want to fuel eat as much as we possibly can, but that doesn't mean we can't have a little bit of fun. So when we're fun eating, we want to pay careful attention when eating our fun foods to be sure that they are actually giving us pleasure. This could look like one small treat a day or a couple fun meals a week. And the rule with fun eating is that you must enjoy each bite. So I like to just turn to Pauline quickly because she's got a really good fun eating example for us.
Well, I love York peppermint patties. And yes, specifically York peppermint patties. I've loved them my whole life. It's been the treat that boyfriends got me. My parents would pick me up from sports with. They were at every like bridal shower, baby shower. Well, started doing Ideal Protein quite 10 years ago. And it was a while after that. I hadn't had them, and my husband surprised me with my kids. They came home and they had York peppermint patty, and I like them frozen, so I put it in the freezer. And I kind of also needed to wait and think about this York peppermint patty because I was very excited about it. But it was a couple of nights later, and I took it out and I just learned to be more in tune to eating. And I took a bite of it, and it was amazing. It was like Christmas morning. It was so good. And I just really enjoyed that first bite. And then I had another one, and it was also very good. But there was something about this moment in time where I realized really quickly that I soon wasn't tasting it. I didn't taste it. Like I could take more bites and I no longer was tasting it. So for probably the first time in my life, I put the rest of that York peppermint patty back in the freezer because I just needed a bite or two.
That's awesome. Okay. Fog eating is, I know, I love that. Fog eating is mindless eating. It's not enjoyable or purposeful. It's that conscious munch. And the goal is to never fog eat and to just stop the minute you catch yourself, right? So it's just more about being mindful and being aware, you know, and just nip it in the bud when you can. Okay, storm eating. This is the most complex eating style. Sometimes storm eatings happen. Sometimes storm eating happens if we let ourselves get too hungry. And sometimes it happens when we have an overwhelming emotion that we don't want to feel. Often storm eating is done in private or in hiding. And it is definitely the most complex form of eating and addiction. And it's also probably the most difficult form of eating to sort of correct and get back to fuel eating. Okay, so with all of those eating styles in mind, Pauline, what further steps can be taken to combat addiction?
Yes, well, I love this part of our presentation. So I hope you get some great ideas from it. If you haven't been taking notes, this is a great time to take some notes. The first one we're going to talk about is, how do we identify ourselves? How do we label ourselves? How do we see ourselves? This is actually a really important topic. You can change a behavior, but if you don't change the thinking that leads to that behavior, you are likely to return to it. What labels have you put on yourself? Do you tell yourself you are a stress eater, or that you're an emotional eater, that you're a poor cook, or that you hate exercise, or that you're lazy or ugly? Have you always been overweight, or at least you tell yourself that, and that you're going to stay that way, that you don't have time, or that you're boring? I love how Heather encourages her clients to address this issue. So I'm going to turn it over to Heather.
Thanks, Pauline. So I've noticed in my coaching over the years that people often use language that is labeling, just like you said, like, I am a sugar junkie, I am a foodie, I'm not a breakfast eater. And those labels can often close the door to changing because we've made it our identity. Identity is really hard to change. So we talk about just reframing, rephrasing some of the statements that people have told themselves for years and years to try to open the door to change. For example, if somebody says, I'm a stress eater, we might try to reframe that by saying, I have a tendency to eat when I feel stressed, and I'm looking for new ways to manage my stress. Then once that question is asked, then we start looking for new answers and looking for new ways. It works really well just for people to understand that they can change.
Yeah, I love that. I love how it opens doors. So the next thing that we love to talk about is to break up. So listen, we need to acknowledge the foods and or the situations which trigger us to overeat or trigger our hunger and cravings, and break up with them. And sometimes we break up with things for good, and sometimes it's for a season. I know we hear it all the time. When do we get to eat this again? This is common in our offices. Well, as much as I would love to always answer at the end of your diet, I can't. Think of the alcoholic or the drug addict. Can they have just a drink or just a small hit? The answer is no. And the food or the sugar addict cannot either. We have to get out of the diet mentality and choose to live differently. And doing that means not allowing things that we feel out of control with back in. Not until we know that we have control over them. Maybe this is again for a season, and maybe this is for life. But a lot of people, when they walk through our doors, if they knew that giving up that one thing meant freedom from that, it's worth it. Trust me. So we've all had to break up with some things. In fact, our offices, the 3 offices. Yeah, Tammy, you have a great one. Talk to us about your breakup.
Yeah, our offices, just to finish your sentence, our offices wrote breakup letters. I broke up with pizza. So, you know, I've been doing this for 10 years. I know all about portion control. Like, you ask me any question about nutrition, I can answer it. And if you bring an extra large pizza to my house, I'm going to eat the whole thing in 24 hours. Nothing you can say or do like changes that. I have that first cheesy bite and it's on. There's a switch that flips in my brain and I become a completely different person. And so I have decided that I'm not doing it anymore. And, you know, I have a teenage son and he has friends over and they have a man cave above the garage. And so that's where the pizza gets delivered. That's where it stays. It doesn't come in my part of my house. And if anyone else in my house wants it, they have to go out to the garage and get it. It just can't. I'm done. Have to be
I think
done.
we all have our breakup stories. I've had to break up with potato chips, and not the Lay's potato chips. Those I can't eat just one. It's the kettle chips that get me, specifically the dill pickle kettle chips. So in March, I wrote my breakup letter to dill pickle kettle chips, but I had actually broken up with them previously. We had gotten back together a couple of times. It's the kind of thing that if they're at my house, I think about it while I'm driving home. And when I get home, it can cause a fog eating episode. So I just don't bring them to my house. I don't go down the chip aisle. They're just a no-go for me. And because I know that it's something that I can't control very well if they're around me. So adios, dill pickle kettle chips.
Love those two examples. You guys, sometimes we have to break up with food, something that's specifically a food trigger for us, and we need to find those things. But sometimes it's a situation, and sometimes it can be even a person. So you need to play detective on yourself and what is leading into some of those situations. And hopefully you have a great health coach that can work through that with you. So the next thing we want to talk about is that we need to find new ways to solve the boredom, stress, or that need for comfort that we often try to find in food, and learn how to do this and leave food out of it. Our brain's pleasure reward center and our body loves that homeostasis balance. When we are faced with the situation that in the past has led us to overeat, our body starts sending these automated messages to fix the problem by what's worked in the past. And a lot of times that's been food. It's crucial to identify and again, play detective on your own life and behaviors to identify these such moments and work consistently to rewire solutions for your brain to go to. Do you often eat late at night or when you're watching TV? What can you do instead? What about when you're stressed or sad? You need to create your own personal toolbox and create a different, healthy, non-food related solution in these moments, and do it consistently for a long time so that you rewire that pleasure reward center to no longer turn to food as your solution. It may mean calling a friend, playing a game, going for a walk, taking a hot bath, joining a chess or bowling club, joining a gym, picking up a book that you've wanted to read for a long time, but find what you enjoy. Seek out new things to try, find new ways to create a dopamine response that doesn't involve food for those moments. Heather, you have a great example about using your hands at night. I always love that you say.
Yeah, so I think it's a pretty common behavior for people to watch TV at night and settle down after dinner and relax a little bit after a long day of working. And that can trigger eating right there because there's a history of eating snacks while sitting on the couch. And we've been doing it for years and years. So those neural pathways are running pretty deep. And so in order to make that change without having to change the behavior of sitting on the couch, a lot of my clients have taken up hobbies that they can do with their hands, like crocheting or knitting or doing a puzzle, or even, making paper cards with rubber stamps or doing something with their hands. They don't want to get their paper or their yarn dirty with food. And so they have this new hobby. And often they create something fantastic in the process. Maybe it's painting or, crocheting. Then they have something to give, something to show, something that's really cool as an outcome.
Yeah, to add on to that, Heather, what we do in my office is we practice the 3 Ds. So delay, disarm, distract, and then there's actually a 4th D, which is decide. So distract, working with your hands instead of eating, that's a great D. Disarm is to, sort of do the breakup thing, get it out of the house or get away from it. And delay is, just to say, okay, I am going to wait 15 minutes before I have something. Because what we know is that hunger comes and goes. And, sometimes that 15 minutes and, that wave of hunger just goes away and you don't need it anymore. So I like to tell one story about a young man named Connor who's in LA. He's probably going to be a famous star. But before he was going to be an actor, he came with me to lose weight so he would look better on camera. And he was doing a youth group trip to California. And he came in and he said he was going on this trip. And I said, what are you going to do? And he said, I don't know what I'm going to do. They're just going to stop at McDonald's all the time. And he said, I can't have McDonald's. And I said, no, you can't. I said, you're going to take your food with you. And he said, okay. And he said, I can do this. I can definitely do this. Right. And so he went and he came back from the trip and I gave him the 3 Ds. Right. And he came back and I said, well, Connor, what did you do? And he said, oh my gosh, Tammy, it was so hard. The French fries smelled so good. And I was in the van and I couldn't get away from it. And I said, what did you do? And he said, well, I rolled down the window on the freeway and I stuck my head out the window. And he said, bugs were hitting my face. He said, but I want to tell you, the smell went away. So that didn't bother me anymore. It was 70 miles an hour on the freeway. Everyone was looking at me and beeping and waving, and that was kind of a distraction. And then I just ate my Ideal Protein, rolled up the window and moved on. And, so every time I'm in this place where it's like, oh, I have to have that, I just think about this redheaded boy sticking his head out of a van on the freeway. And I realized that I just have to practice my 3 Ds and not give in to that craving.
I love the 3 Ds. I love it. Thank you, Tammy. That's such a great story. All right, so we're going to switch to the last couple topics on the slide here. If you have family and friends who care for you, which I know you do and are positive in your life, absolutely talk to them about your struggles and how you're planning to handle food differently. Many families have benefited as a whole because one person said, I can no longer eat like this. The truth is, oftentimes there's others who can no longer or don't want to eat this way anymore. And one loving and honest family member can change or break generational struggles. That said, if you have people in your life, family or friends, who do not support you or could possibly be triggers for some of your food overeating, I encourage you not to share your struggles with them. Know and evaluate who is safe with this information wisely. Often just 1 or 2 people is plenty to encourage you, to wink at you across the room full of the wrong foods, affirming that you've got this, that you can do things differently. On this note also, the people supporting you should not be enablers or food addicts themselves, as that will probably not be helpful to you. They need to be people you feel safe being accountable to and safe hearing. How can you make sure that doesn't happen again instead of, it's okay, it happens to everyone? The truth may hurt from time to time, but it is impossible to change without it. Lastly, it is good to ask a professional for help. First of all, each of us leading this class tonight are professionals and work with people to help them eat. Or talk more about what we do, let me say there's a time and a place to seek a licensed counselor or a psychiatrist. Oftentimes, we would say that when and if storm eating is a constant struggle, that's when you would refer to that. So talking a little bit about what we do in our offices. So in light of this discussion, we wanted to just share what we do. So we offer the Ideal Protein protocol. This is a 3-phase medically designed protocol that helps you lose weight and learn to keep it off. It's amazing. Phase 1 is fuel eating. It's really what Tammy talked about. It's lean protein and vegetables, low nutritional ketosis, which allows your body to use stored fat for what it's intended for, a backup energy source. It is an incredible protocol where the science behind it helps your body protect its lean muscle mass and give your pancreas a resting and healing state. Protecting your lean mass by following the protocol allows you to return to eating other foods when you're done, and your muscle is there to drive your metabolism. It's an amazing protocol in that you feel great while eating this way, because although you may be eating around 1,000 calories a day, your body is using 1,400 calories of its own fat every day. And therefore you feel satisfied and have great energy because you're living off a total of 2,400 calories for energy. I often say this is one of our body's happy places. I've worked with teens to 78-year-olds, long list of medications and health history, and it's plain and simple science that works. In our second phase, this is where we start slowly reintroducing fats, low glycemic carbs, and more healthy protein options in such a way that we can carefully watch for triggers, hunger, or cravings and help you manage it. Our goal in this phase is to find your personal macro code, the right amount of fats, carbs, and proteins so that you're keeping your new healthy weight, feeling satisfied, and not battling hunger or cravings. At this point, we celebrate with you and move you to phase 3, which is where we go into weight maintenance. And this is a plan with a minimum of 17 appointments over the next year. In this phase, we work through reading labels, what's in your pantry, your food home environment, managing your new weight, physical activity, managing stress, managing setbacks that do come, self-care, and so much more. You have someone to stay with you as you relearn and learn to navigate much of what we've talked about throughout this class. It really is the gold of what we do. Tammy, will you wrap us up?
Yes. So the food industry is eroding our nation's health and well-being, and we want you to know that you can fix all of it. We can fight this. We can get back to eating healthy. We can change our lifestyles. We can do this. And Ideal Protein can help you win the battle. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Pauline. Thank you, Heather. And we want to toast you having a new, happy, healthy life, understanding food cravings and addiction.